The courthouse hallway buzzed with whispers as 10-year-old Lily sat on a wooden bench, her fingers buried in the thick fur of her black Labrador. The dog, Shadow, rested his head on her lap, his warm brown eyes never leaving her face. Lily hadn't spoken a word in 6 months. Not to her mother, not to her teachers, and certainly not to any of the strangers in suits who kept asking her questions. "It's almost time," her mother said softly, kneeling down in front of her. "Remember what Dr. Taylor said? You don't have to speak if you don't want to. Just stay calm and keep Shadow close." Lily nodded, her hand finding the special pocket in her dress where she kept a small toy rabbit for luck. Her mother had circles under her eyes that hadn't been there before everything changed. Lily wanted to tell her she was sorry for not talking, sorry for making everything harder, but the words stayed trapped inside, like birds in a cage she couldn't open. Down the hall, Judge Eleanor Winters prepared for what should have been a routine custody hearing. At 62, with salt and pepper hair always pulled back in a neat bun, she had seen just about everything in her 27 years on the bench. Family court could be messy, but she prided herself on her ability to see through the chaos to find what was best for the children caught in the middle. "Your Honor," her clerk said, knocking lightly on the door. "They're ready when you are." Judge Winters nodded, gathering her papers. "The Matthews case, correct? Mother seeking sole custody, father contesting?" "Yes, Your Honor. And there's something else. The child hasn't spoken since the incident 6 months ago. She has a service dog with her." The judge paused. "A service dog? For selective mutism?" "Apparently, it's a newer program. The mother's attorney submitted all the proper documentation. The dog is trained to help with anxiety and trauma response." Judge Winters had allowed therapy animals in her courtroom before, usually for children testifying in abuse cases. She made a mental note to pay special attention to the interaction between the girl and her dog. Sometimes what wasn't said spoke volumes. In the courtroom, Lily's father, Richard, sat with his attorney, both in crisp suits that seemed to shine under the fluorescent lights. He smiled at Lily when she entered, but she kept her eyes on Shadow, who walked perfectly in step beside her. Richard's smile faltered, then disappeared entirely. Lily's mother, Beth, guided her daughter to their table where her attorney waited. The woman had kind eyes and had spoken to Lily directly during their meetings, not around her like most adults did these days. "All rise," called the bailiff as Judge Winters entered. The hearing began with opening statements from both attorneys. Lily tried to focus on Shadow's steady breathing against her leg instead of the grown-up words flying back and forth. Words like custody arrangement and psychological evaluation and best interests of the child. Richard's attorney, a man with a voice that reminded Lily of the principal at school, stood up first. "Your Honor, my client has been unfairly separated from his daughter based on unsubstantiated claims. Ms. Matthews has encouraged this concerning behavior, the child's refusal to speak, as a manipulation tactic to sway the court's sympathy. Mr. Matthews loves his daughter and deserves equal time with her." Lily felt her chest tighten. Shadow immediately pressed closer and she found herself counting his spots, a trick Dr. Taylor had taught her when the world got too loud. Next came her mother's attorney. "Your Honor, Lily's selective mutism began immediately after spending a weekend with her father 6 months ago. Her therapist has diagnosed her with post-traumatic stress disorder. The service dog, Shadow, was prescribed as part of her treatment plan. We're asking the court to award full custody to Ms. Matthews with supervised visitation for Mr. Matthews until we understand what happened to cause such a dramatic change in this once outgoing child." Judge Winters looked directly at Lily for the first time. Not with pity or frustration like most grown-ups, but with a steady gaze that somehow didn't make Lily want to hide. "I understand we have Lily's therapist here to testify today," the judge said. Dr. Taylor was called to the stand. She was younger than most doctors Lily had met, with tiny butterfly clips in her hair and shoes that squeaked slightly when she walked. She explained how Shadow had been specially trained to help Lily feel safe and to recognize signs of distress. "Your Honor, in cases of trauma, children often lose their voice, both literally and figuratively." Shadow provides Lily with a sense of security that has been essential to her healing process. And has Lily given you any indication through writing or other means about what might have triggered this condition? Judge Winters asked. She hasn't, Dr. Taylor replied. But that's not unusual in trauma cases. The body remembers what the mind tries to protect us from. Shadow helps her regulate her emotions when those body memories surface. Richard's attorney stood up again. Your Honor, this is precisely our concern. Without any concrete evidence of wrongdoing, my client is being treated as guilty. Perhaps the dog is just another way to avoid the real issue. A child upset about her parents' divorce who has found that staying silent gets her attention. Lily's hands began to shake. Shadow immediately placed his paw on her foot. Their secret signal that he was there, that she wasn't alone. The courtroom seemed to shrink around her, the walls pressing in. She could feel her father's eyes on her from across the room. Judge Winters must have noticed something change, because she suddenly said, I'd like to speak with Lily directly now in my chambers, with Shadow, of course, and a court representative present. Lily's heart pounded so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. Her mother squeezed her hand and whispered, It's okay, sweetie. I'll be right outside. The judge's chambers felt different than the courtroom, smaller but somehow less scary. Books lined the walls and a window looked out onto a small garden. Judge Winters sat not behind her big desk, but in a soft chair across from Lily. Do you mind if Shadow sits with us? The judge asked, gesturing to the space between them. Lily nodded, and Shadow settled himself half on Lily's feet, half on the carpet. Lily, Judge Winters said gently, I want you to know that this room is safe. Nothing you do or don't do will be wrong. I just want to understand how you're feeling so I can make the best decision for you. Can you help me with that? Lily stared at her hands. A court lady with a notebook sat quietly in the corner watching. I see Shadow is very important to you, the judge continued. Dr. Taylor told me he helps you feel better when you're scared, is that right? Lily gave the smallest of nods. Are you scared now? Another tiny nod. What about when you're with your mother? Do you feel scared then? Lily shook her head. The judge's voice remained steady. And when you're with your father, do you feel safe then? Lily froze. The question hung in the air between them. Shadow sensed the change immediately, lifting his head to look at her. His training had taught him to recognize when her heart rate increased, when her breathing changed. Lily's fingers twisted in her dress. You don't have to answer with words, Judge Winters said. Whatever way you can tell me is fine. Something in the judge's eyes made Lily believe her. In that moment, she remembered what Dr. Taylor had been, practicing with her and Shadow, their special way of talking without words. It had been their secret, something that made Lily feel less broken for not speaking. Shadow was watching her intently now, waiting. Under the table, hidden from view, Lily's hand moved in a small, deliberate pattern near her leg, a signal only Shadow would recognize. What happened next would change everything, though Lily didn't know it yet. Shadow's behavior shifted in an instant, moving from relaxed to alert. He stood up from his spot between them and turned to face the door, the direction of the courtroom where her father waited. The dog's body language spoke volumes to anyone trained to read it. The stiffening of his posture, the slight raise of his hackles, the protective stance in front of Lily. Judge Winters didn't miss a single detail. Her expression remained neutral, but her eyes narrowed slightly as she watched the interaction. 27 years on the bench had taught her to notice the things people tried to hide, and right now, this dog was saying something important. Thank you, Lily, she said quietly. I think Shadow has helped me understand a little better. As they walked back toward the courtroom, Shadow staying close to Lily's side, Judge Winters made a decision. This hearing would not end today. Something was happening beneath the surface, something this silent girl and her loyal dog were trying to tell her. And Eleanor Winters had never been one to stop listening until she heard the whole story. The courtroom fell silent as Lily and Shadow returned, with Judge Winters. Beth noticed her daughter's face seemed paler than before. and she reached out to squeeze Lily's hand as the child slid back into her seat. Shadow positioned himself between Lily and the aisle that separated them from Richard, a detail not lost on the judge. "We'll take a 15-minute recess," Judge Winters announced, her voice giving away nothing of what had transpired in her chambers. "When we return, I'd like to hear testimony from both parents." As people shuffled out of the courtroom, Beth knelt beside Lily. "Are you okay, sweetheart? Do you need some water or a snack?" Lily shook her head, her fingers absently tracing the outline of Shadow's ear. The dog remained unusually alert, his eyes tracking Richard as he spoke in hushed tones with his attorney across the room. "Whatever happens, we'll get through it together," Beth whispered, tucking a strand of hair behind Lily's ear. "You and me and Shadow." In the hallway, Judge Winters pulled aside the court-appointed child advocate, a woman named Grace who had been following the case since its beginning. "I want you to contact someone from the Service Dog Training Center," the judge said quietly. "Find out exactly what these dogs are trained to do, especially regarding trauma responses. And I want it before we reconvene." Grace nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. Anything specific I should ask about?" The judge considered her words carefully. "Ask about communication signals between the child and the dog. I saw something in my chambers that warrants further investigation." Meanwhile, Richard paced near the water fountain, his attorney attempting to calm him down. "This is ridiculous," Richard hissed. "That dog is just another way for Beth to manipulate the situation. Lily was always a little dramatic even before the divorce." "Mr. Matthews," his attorney cautioned, "please keep your voice down. Courts take service animals very seriously these days. We need to focus on presenting you as a concerned, loving father." Richard ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "I am concerned. My daughter won't even look at me, let alone speak to me. This has Beth written all over it." Back in the courtroom, everyone settled into their places as Judge Winters returned. Her expression remained unreadable, but those who knew her well might have noticed the slight tightness around her mouth that appeared when she was troubled by a case. "Mr. Matthews, please take the stand," she directed. Richard straightened his tie and walked confidently to the witness box. After being sworn in, he smiled at the court, the practiced smile of a man who knew how to charm people. "Mr. Matthews, when was the last time you spent time alone with your daughter?" his attorney asked. "About 6 months ago," Richard replied. "A weekend visit that was part of our temporary custody arrangement. After that, Beth started making excuses about why Lily couldn't come over. Then suddenly I'm told my daughter refuses to speak and needs a dog with her at all times. And how was your relationship with Lily before this?" Richard's face softened in what appeared to be genuine emotion. "Wonderful. She was a daddy's girl, always chattering away about school or her friends or the latest book she was reading. Lily has always been bright, creative. To see her like this..." He shook his head. "It breaks my heart." From her seat, Lily stared intently at the floor. Shadow shifted his weight, pressing his body more firmly against her legs. "During that last weekend visit, did anything unusual happen?" Richard's attorney continued. "Nothing at all," Richard insisted. "We went to the park, made dinner together, watched a movie. Normal father-daughter stuff. She seemed a little quiet on Sunday, but I figured she was just tired." Beth's attorney stood for cross-examination. She was shorter than Richard's lawyer, but carried herself with quiet confidence. "Mr. Matthews, your ex-wife has provided school records showing that Lily was a well-adjusted, outgoing child with excellent verbal skills prior to that weekend. Yet immediately after returning from your home, she stopped speaking entirely. You maintain nothing happened to cause such a dramatic change?" Richard's jaw tightened slightly. "Kids go through phases. Maybe the divorce was harder on her than we realized. Maybe she's figured out that acting this way gets her mother's undivided attention." "So you're suggesting a 10-year-old child would voluntarily stop speaking for 6 months as a form of manipulation?" Beth's attorney pressed. "I'm suggesting my ex-wife has a history of being overprotective and dramatic," Richard countered. "Lily picks up on that." A soft growl rumbled from Shadow's throat, so quiet that only those nearest to Lily could hear it. The judge's eyes flicked toward the dog, then back to Richard. "No further questions," Beth's attorney said, returning to her seat. Next, Beth took the stand. Unlike Richard's confident stride, her steps were measured, careful. She twisted her wedding ring, a habit she hadn't broken despite the divorce. "Ms. Matthews," her attorney began, "please describe Lily's behavior when she returned from her father's home 6 months ago." Beth took a deep breath. She was different, completely silent. "At first, I thought she was just tired or upset about leaving her dad's place. But when she wouldn't speak the next morning, I got worried. By the third day, when she still hadn't said a word and was having nightmares, I took her to her pediatrician. And what did the doctor recommend? She referred us to Dr. Taylor, the child psychologist who testified earlier. After several sessions, Dr. Taylor diagnosed Lily with selective mutism triggered by a traumatic event and recommended the service dog program. How has Shadow helped Lily?" Beth's eyes grew misty. "In every way possible. The nightmares have decreased. She's sleeping better. She still doesn't speak, but with Shadow she seems safer somehow, less frightened." Richard's attorney stood for cross-examination, his voice sharp. "Ms. Matthews, isn't it true that you and Mr. Matthews had a contentious divorce?" "We had disagreements," Beth admitted. "Disagreements that included a custody battle where you initially tried to limit his access to Lily? I wanted a schedule that would provide stability for our daughter during a difficult transition," Beth countered. "Isn't it possible that Lily's condition is a response to the conflict between her parents rather than anything that happened at her father's home?" Beth met his gaze steadily. "Anything is possible, but the timing is very specific. Lily spoke normally the morning I dropped her off at Richard's. She hasn't spoken a single word since I picked her up 2 days later." As the questioning continued, Judge Winters observed Lily and Shadow carefully. The girl remained still, her face a mask of concentration as she listened to her mother's testimony. But the dog's behavior was fascinating. Subtle shifts in position that seemed to correspond with certain topics. The way his eyes never left Richard, the protective stance that wasn't part of typical service dog protocol. A court officer approached the judge and discreetly handed her a note. Judge Winters read it quickly, her eyebrows rising slightly before her professional mask slipped back into place. "Thank you, Ms. Matthews. You may step down," she said when the questioning finished. "Before we proceed further, I'd like to call an additional witness." She looked toward the back of the courtroom. "The court calls Dr. Olivia Chen." A woman in her 40s with short black hair and wire-rimmed glasses made her way to the front. After being sworn in, she sat with perfect posture, hands folded in her lap. "Dr. Chen, please state your credentials for the court," Judge Winters directed. "I have a doctorate in animal behavior with a specialization in service animals. I'm the director of the Canine Communication Program at the Service Animal Training Center where Shadow was trained." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Neither attorney had been expecting this witness. "Dr. Chen, my office contacted you as an expert consultant when certain behaviors exhibited by the service dog Shadow raised questions for the court. Can you explain to us exactly what these dogs are trained to do?" Dr. Chen nodded. "Our program specifically trains dogs to assist children with trauma-related conditions, including selective mutism. Beyond the standard service dog training, these dogs learn to recognize physiological signs of distress, changes in heart rate, breathing, body temperature, and subtle muscle tension patterns." "And is there a communication system between the child and the dog?" "Yes, Your Honor. For children who cannot or will not speak, we teach a series of hand signals that allow the child to communicate specific feelings to the dog. The dog then responds with behaviors that alert caregivers to the child's emotional state." Judge Winters leaned forward slightly. "So theoretically, could a child use these signals to communicate something they're unable to express verbally?" "That's exactly the purpose," Dr. Chen confirmed. "Many trauma survivors, especially children, struggle to verbalize their experiences. The dog becomes a bridge, translating the child's hidden communication into visible behaviors that trained observers can interpret." The courtroom was completely silent now. Richard shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Would you be able to observe Shadow's behavior and interpret what he might be communicating? The judge asked. I would, Your Honor. These response patterns are standardized across our program. Judge Winters turned toward Lily. Lily, would it be all right if Dr. Chen observes you and Shadow for a few minutes? Lily glanced up, her eyes meeting the judge's for the first time. After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. Very well, Judge Winters said. Court will recess for 30 minutes while Dr. Chen conducts her observation. Only Lily, her mother, Dr. Chen, and the court-appointed advocate will be present. As Richard began to protest, his attorney placed a restraining hand on his arm. Judge Winters's expression made it clear her decision was final. What happens in the next half hour, she announced to the courtroom, may change the course of these proceedings entirely. The small conference room felt safer than the courtroom. Lily sat cross-legged on the floor with Shadow, while Dr. Chen knelt a few feet away. Beth and Grace, the court advocate, watched quietly from chairs near the wall. The only sound was the gentle hum of the air conditioning. Hi, Lily, Dr. Chen said, her voice warm but professional. I helped train dogs like Shadow. Would it be okay if I watch how you two talk to each other? Lily looked at her mother, who nodded encouragingly. The girl turned back to Dr. Chen and gave a small nod of her own. Perfect. You don't need to do anything special, Dr. Chen explained. Just be with Shadow like you normally would. I'm going to sit over here and take a few notes, okay? For several minutes, Dr. Chen simply observed. She noted how Shadow positioned himself against Lily's leg, how his eyes regularly scanned the room before returning to the girl's face. The connection between them was evident, a silent conversation happening through touch and tiny movements. Lily, Dr. Chen said after a while, I notice that Shadow seems very protective of you. Did you practice the special signals with him and Dr. Taylor? Lily nodded, her fingers absently stroking Shadow's ear. Would you be willing to show me one? Maybe the signal for I'm happy or I feel safe? Lily thought for a moment, then made a subtle motion with her right hand, fingers spreading wide before relaxing again. Immediately, Shadow's posture softened, his tail sweeping once across the carpet. That's excellent, Dr. Chen said, making a note. Shadow understood you perfectly. Beth watched with tears in her eyes. For months she had felt helpless as her daughter retreated into silence. Seeing Lily communicate even in this limited way filled her with both hope and heartbreak. Dr. Chen shifted slightly, keeping her body language open and non-threatening. Lily, sometimes our dogs help us say things that feel too big or scary to say with words. Judge Winters noticed Shadow did something special when she asked you about feeling safe with your dad. Would you be willing to show me that signal? Lily froze, her hand stilling on Shadow's fur. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, her small fingers formed a different gesture near her leg, a tight fist that trembled slightly. The change in Shadow was immediate and dramatic. He rose to his feet, positioning himself directly in front of Lily, facing the door. His ears flattened against his head, and a low rumble, not quite a growl, came from his chest. His body language screamed protection, creating a barrier between Lily and an invisible threat. Dr. Chen nodded, her face carefully neutral despite the weight of what she was witnessing. Thank you, Lily. That was very brave. She made several more notes, then asked, Is there anything else you'd like to tell me through Shadow? Lily hesitated, then made another signal, different from the previous two. Shadow immediately moved to her side and pressed his nose against her arm 3 times in succession, then turned in a circle before sitting again, his eyes never leaving the door. Dr. Chen's eyebrows rose slightly. She wrote something down, underlined it twice, then closed. Her notebook. Thank you, Lily. You and Shadow make an amazing team. She turned to Beth and Grace. I've seen what I need to see. Back in the courtroom, tension hung in the air like a storm about to break. Richard had spent the recess in fierce conversation with his attorney, their hushed voices occasionally rising before being quickly lowered again. He straightened his tie repeatedly, a nervous habit he'd developed during the divorce proceedings. When Judge Winters returned to the bench, her face was grave. Dr. Chen sat in the witness box, her notebook open on her lap. Dr. Chen, please share your observations with the court, the judge directed. Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Chen's professional demeanor never wavered. I observed Lily and Shadow's communication system, which is functioning exactly as designed. When asked to demonstrate the signal for feeling unsafe around her father, Lily produced a distinct hand gesture that triggered Shadow's protective response protocol. And what exactly does this protocol entail? Judge Winters asked. The dog is trained to position himself between the child and the perceived threat, display alert posture, and make himself physically larger, all non-aggressive protective behaviors. Designed to create space and signal to adults that the child is experiencing fear, Richard's attorney stood up. Objection, Your Honor. This is all highly subjective. The dog could be responding to any number of cues, including from the mother. Ms. Matthews was seated well away from Lily during the observation. Dr. Chen replied, calmly. And these are specific trained responses to specific signals, not general behavior. Overruled, Judge Winters said. Please continue, Dr. Chen. Lily also demonstrated a third signal that corresponds to our disclosure sequence training. This is a specific communication used when a child wants to share information about a traumatic event, but cannot verbalize it. The courtroom fell completely silent. Even the court reporter's fingers hovered motionless above her keyboard. Shadow's response, 3 nose touches followed by a turning circle, is the trained confirmation that the dog has received this signal. In our program, this particular sequence is only taught to children who have experienced serious trauma and need a way to indicate they're ready to communicate about it through alternative means. Judge Winters leaned forward. Dr. Chen, in your professional opinion, what does this interaction tell us? It tells us that Lily is using the communication system exactly as it was designed, to express feelings she cannot verbalize. Her signals and Shadow's responses indicate she experiences significant fear associated with her father, and that there is something specific she wishes to communicate about their interactions. Richard stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. It's a dog, for God's sake. How can you possibly— Mr. Matthews, Judge Winters cut in sharply. Sit down immediately or I will have you removed. Richard's face flushed red, but he lowered himself back into his chair, knuckles white as he gripped the table. Your Honor, his attorney tried again. Surely we need more substantive evidence than a dog's behavior to make determinations about my client's parental rights. Judge Winters fixed him with a steady gaze. Counsel, the court recognizes that this is an unusual situation. However, service animals are increasingly accepted as legitimate supports in our legal system, particularly for vulnerable witnesses. Dr. Chen's expertise helps us interpret what we're seeing. She turned back to Dr. Chen. Doctor, is there a way for Lily to communicate more specific information through this system? Yes, Your Honor. We have a protocol called facilitated disclosure that uses picture cards and simple yes/no responses that the dog is trained to confirm. It was developed specifically for cases like this, where a child cannot verbally disclose but needs to communicate critical information. Judge Winters considered this for a moment. The court would like to proceed with this protocol, but in a more private setting. We'll adjourn to my chambers with Lily, Shadow, Dr. Chen, both attorneys, and the court advocate present. Richard's attorney stood again. Your Honor, my client has the right to be present for any testimony that affects his case. Your client's presence may inhibit the very disclosure we're trying to facilitate, Judge Winters replied firmly. The attorneys will represent both parties' interests, and a complete record will be kept. My ruling stands. As they prepared to move to the judge's chambers, Beth knelt beside Lily. You're doing so well, sweetheart. Shadow is helping everyone understand. I'm so proud of you. Lily's eyes welled with tears, the first emotion she'd shown openly in the courtroom. She wrapped her arms around Shadow's neck, burying her face in his fur. In the judge's chambers, Dr. Chen arranged a series of cards on a low table where Lily could reach them. Each card had a simple image: places, emotions, actions. Lily, Dr. Chen explained gently, these cards can help you tell us what happened. You can point to the ones that feel right, and Shadow will help show everyone that it's really your choice. Lily looked at the card spread before her, then at Shadow, who sat attentively by her side. For the first time since entering the courthouse, her shoulders relaxed slightly. "Whenever you're ready," Judge Winters said kindly. "Take all the time you need." The room held its collective breath as Lily's small hand hovered over the cards. After a moment's hesitation, she reached out and touched one, then another, and another. Shadow watched intently, confirming each choice with the trained response. Nose touch, pause, nose touch. As the story unfolded through Lily's careful selections, the judge's expression remained neutral, but her eyes grew increasingly troubled. The court advocate took detailed notes. The attorneys watched in stunned silence. And in that quiet room, with the help of a devoted dog, Lily finally found a way to speak her truth. An hour had passed in the judge's chambers. The story Lily told through picture cards and shadows confirming. Signals had left everyone in the room shaken. It wasn't a dramatic tale of obvious abuse. Those were easier in some ways, clearer in their horror. Instead, it was a quiet kind of nightmare, made up of small moments that painted a disturbing picture. Judge Winters had watched the entire process with growing concern. The picture cards Lily selected revealed that during her weekend visit, her father had become increasingly angry about the divorce settlement. He had questioned her repeatedly about her mother, about what Beth said when Lily wasn't around, about whether men ever visited their house. When Lily's answers didn't satisfy him, his anger escalated. The final incident occurred Sunday evening. Richard had been drinking, a fact he had conveniently omitted from his testimony. He had shown Lily photos of her mother from college, saying terrible things about her character. When Lily had tried to defend her mother, Richard grabbed her arm hard enough to leave marks and told her that if she ever repeated what he'd said, he would make sure she never saw her mother again. He made her promise not to tell anyone about their special talk. Lily had selected cards showing fear, confusion, and a child being told to keep secrets. Most disturbing was the card showing a child unable to speak. Lily had pointed to her throat while selecting this one, indicating that the fear of speaking had become physical, closing her throat whenever she tried. Dr. Chen had guided the session with gentle professionalism, making sure Lily felt safe throughout the difficult disclosure. Shadow had remained pressed against Lily's side, occasionally licking her hand when her breathing became too rapid. Now, as they prepared to return to the courtroom, Judge Winters knelt down to Lily's level. "Thank you for sharing your story with us," she said quietly. That took incredible bravery. Lily didn't smile, but something in her eyes lightened slightly. The look of someone who has carried a heavy secret for too long, finally setting it down. In the courtroom, Richard was pacing near his table. When the door to the chambers opened, he turned sharply, his expression darkening as he saw his daughter clutching Shadow's harness. Judge Winters took her place at the bench. The air in the courtroom felt electric with tension. "Before I make my ruling," Judge Winters began, "I want to address something important. Our legal system was designed for people who can speak their truth aloud, but trauma often steals voices, especially from children. Today, we've witnessed something remarkable, a child finding a different way to speak with the help of a specially trained animal." She looked directly at Richard, whose face had gone pale. "Mr. Matthews, the disclosure session has revealed concerning behaviors during your last weekend visit with Lily. The court advocate will be filing a detailed report, and I am ordering a full investigation." Richard's attorney leaned over and whispered urgently in his ear, but Richard shook him off. "This is insane," Richard burst out. "You're believing a dog over me? I love my daughter. I would never hurt her." "Mr. Matthews," Judge Winters said firmly, "the cards selected by your daughter paint a disturbing picture of emotional manipulation and threats. The fact that Lily stopped speaking immediately after that weekend is not coincidental." Beth reached for Lily's hand under the table, squeezing it gently. Lily's focus remained on Shadow, her fingers buried in his fur. "Your Honor," Richard's attorney tried, "my client acknowledges there may have been an unfortunate conversation during the weekend in question. Mr. Matthews was under considerable stress due to the divorce proceedings, and he admits to having several drinks that evening. However, he categorically denies any intention to frighten or harm his daughter. Richard nodded vigorously. It was one bad night, one mistake. You can't take my daughter away because of one bad night. Judge Winter's expression remained stern. Mr. Matthews, children learn who they can trust through our actions, not our intentions. The effect of your behavior has been profound. Your daughter hasn't spoken a word in 6 months. She shuffled some papers on her desk, then continued. In light of today's disclosure, I am issuing a temporary order as follows. Ms. Matthews will retain full physical and legal custody of Lily. Mr. Matthews will have no contact for 30 days, during which time he will undergo a psychological evaluation and begin anger management counseling. After 30 days, supervised visitation may be considered if recommended by Lily's therapist. Richard slammed his hand on the table. This is Mr. Matthews. Judge Winters's voice cracked like thunder. One more outburst and I will hold you in contempt. This is not the final ruling. You have an opportunity to demonstrate that you recognize the seriousness of the situation and are willing to do the work to repair your relationship with your daughter. Richard fell silent, his jaw working as he struggled to control himself. Additionally, the judge continued, I am ordering continued therapy for Lily, with Shadow present at all sessions. The court recognizes the significant role this service animal has played in Lily's ability to communicate her experiences. She looked down at Lily and softened her tone slightly. Young lady, this court believes you. We hear you, even without words. As Judge Winters finalized the details of her ruling, Beth leaned close to her daughter. It's over for now, sweetheart. We're going home. Outside the courthouse, the afternoon sun felt impossibly bright after hours in the fluorescent-lit rooms. Beth guided Lily toward their car, Shadow padding faithfully alongside them. They had almost reached the parking lot when a voice called out behind them, Wait! Please wait! Beth turned, instinctively positioning herself between Lily and the approaching figure. It was Dr. Chen, slightly out of breath from hurrying after them. I wanted to give you this, she said, holding out a business card. There's a support group for parents of children with selective mutism. They meet twice a month, and this, she handed over a second card, is a colleague who specializes in helping children recover their voices after trauma. Beth took the cards, blinking back tears. Thank you for everything today. Dr. Chen smiled, then crouched down to Lily's level. You did something really hard today, Lily. Shadow is lucky to have such a brave partner. For the first time that day, Lily's face relaxed into something almost like a smile. Dr. Chen reached out slowly, giving Lily time to pull away if she wanted, and gently squeezed her shoulder. Your voice is still there, she said softly. It's waiting for you when you're ready. Until then, Shadow will help you say what you need to say. As they drove home, Beth kept glancing in the rearview mirror at her daughter. Lily sat quietly in the back seat, Shadow's head resting on her lap as she stared out the window. The weight of the day hung heavy around them, but beneath the exhaustion, Beth felt something she hadn't experienced in months, hope. That evening, after a quiet dinner of Lily's favorite mac and cheese, Beth tucked her daughter into bed. Shadow settled into his usual spot at the foot of the mattress, his watchful eyes following Beth as she smoothed the blankets. I'm so proud of you, Beth whispered, brushing Lily's hair from her forehead. So proud. Get some rest now. She was almost to the door when she heard it, so faint she thought she might have imagined it. Mama? Beth froze, her hand on the light switch. Slowly, she turned back toward the bed. Lily was looking at her, eyes wide in the dim glow of the nightlight. Lily? Beth whispered, hardly daring to hope. Mama, Lily said again, her voice raspy from disuse but unmistakably there. We did good today. Beth crossed the room in 3 quick steps, gathering her daughter into her arms as tears spilled down her cheeks. Yes, baby. You did so good. Shadow wiggled closer, nudging his nose against Lily's arm. She reached out to stroke his head. Shadow helped me be brave, Lily murmured, each word sounding like a precious gift. He did, Beth agreed, her voice thick with emotion. He helped all of us. Lily yawned, her eyelids growing heavy. The judge believed me. She did, sweetheart, even though I didn't talk. Beth kissed her daughter's forehead. Sometimes the most important things don't need words. As Lily drifted toward sleep, still wrapped in her mother's arms, Shadow kept watch from his place on the bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would be more meetings, more therapy sessions, more healing to do. But tonight, in this quiet room, a silence had been broken. A voice, small but determined, had found its way back into the world. And a faithful dog, his mission accomplished, rested his head on his paws and closed his eyes, knowing his girl was finally safe. 3 months had passed since the day in court. The maple trees outside Lily's window were turning fiery shades of orange and red, and the mornings had grown crisp enough for sweaters. Shadow's black fur stood out starkly against the colorful leaves as he and Lily walked through the park, a ritual they now enjoyed every Saturday morning. "Throw it higher, Mom," Lily called, her voice clear and strong as she waited for Beth to toss the tennis ball. Beth smiled and obliged, sending the ball sailing through the autumn air. Shadow took off like a rocket, his powerful legs carrying him across the grass until he snatched the ball mid-jump. Lily's laughter rang out, a sound that still brought tears to Beth's eyes sometimes. Each word, each giggle felt like a miracle after those silent months. "Good boy, Shadow," Lily praised as the dog trotted back to drop the slobbery ball at her feet. "You're the fastest dog in the whole world." As they continued their game, Beth's phone buzzed in her pocket. She checked the screen and sighed. It was Richard's attorney again. Since the court hearing, Richard had completed his required anger management course and psychological evaluation. He had been granted limited supervised visitation 2 weeks ago, short meetings at a family counseling center with a professional present at all times. Lily had been nervous before the first visit, clutching Shadow's harness so tightly her knuckles turned white. But she went and she spoke. Not much, but enough to answer her father's careful questions about school and her friends. Shadow had been there too, a constant reassurance by her side. Beth put the phone back in her pocket without answering. The message could wait until Monday. These Saturday mornings were sacred, just the 3 of them, playing in the park like any normal family. Normal. The word still felt strange. Their new normal included weekly therapy sessions for Lily, monthly check-ins with the court advocate, and the support group Dr. Chen had recommended, which had become Beth's lifeline during the hardest days. "Mom, can we get hot chocolate?" Lily asked, cheeks flushed from running. "I think Shadow's getting cold," Beth laughed. "Shadow has a fur coat, sweetie. I think you're the one who's cold." Lily grinned, not denying it. "Maybe, but he likes the whipped cream you sneak him when you think I'm not looking." "Busted," Beth admitted, ruffling her daughter's hair. "Hot chocolate it is." At the cafe near the park, they claimed their usual table by the window. The owner, a grandmotherly woman named Fran, brought over 2 steaming mugs and a small dish of whipped cream for the hero, as she always said when setting it down for Shadow. The story of the silent girl and her dog had spread through their small community in the weeks following the court hearing. Not the private details. Judge Winters had sealed those records, but the remarkable tale of how a service dog had helped a child find justice. Shadow had become something of a local celebrity, with children asking to pet him and adults smiling warmly when they passed on the street. "You've got math homework this weekend, right?" Beth asked, wiping a chocolate mustache from Lily's upper lip. Lily nodded, making a face. "Fractions. I hate fractions." "We can work on it together after lunch," Beth promised. "You're getting better at them." As they chatted about school and weekend plans, neither noticed the woman watching them from across the cafe until she approached their table. "Excuse me," she said softly. "I'm sorry to interrupt." Beth looked up, instantly protective. The woman was well-dressed, perhaps in her 50s, with kind eyes behind stylish glasses. "My name is Rita Dawson," she continued. "I'm a court advocate in County Heights. I hope you don't mind, but Judge Winters told me I might find you here." Beth relaxed slightly at the mention of Judge Winters. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, Rita assured her. I was hoping to speak with you about something important. May I join you for a moment? Beth hesitated, then nodded. Lily scooted closer to Shadow, who remained alert but calm. Thank you, Rita said, taking a seat. Judge Winters has told me about your case, about Shadow and how he helped Lily communicate in court. She smiled at the dog, who was watching her with intelligent eyes. It was groundbreaking. What happened that day? We're just glad it worked out, Beth said cautiously. That's actually why I'm here. Rita placed a business card on the table. I work with children in the court system, children who have experienced trauma and struggle to testify. After hearing about Lily and Shadow, Judge Winters and I started researching service animals as communication aids for traumatized children. Lily's hand found Shadow's fur, a habit that had persisted even as her voice returned. We've developed a pilot program, Rita continued, her eyes bright with purpose. Training service dogs specifically to help children communicate in legal settings. We've partnered with Dr. Chen's organization, and we have funding for the first year, but... She paused, glancing at Lily. We could use your help. Our help? Beth repeated, surprised. We need ambassadors, people who can speak about their experience, help train court personnel to understand the signals, maybe even visit with children who are preparing to testify. Rita smiled at Lily. Only if you want to, of course, and only when you're ready. Lily looked up at her mother, then back at Rita. You want me to talk about Shadow? About what happened in court? Only the parts you feel comfortable sharing, Rita assured her. Your story could help other kids who can't find their voices. Beth watched her daughter carefully, ready to end the conversation at the first sign of distress. But Lily's face showed thoughtfulness, not fear. Would Shadow come too? Lily asked. Rita laughed. Shadow would be our star attraction. The children would love meeting him. Lily nodded slowly. I think I'd like to help. Other kids should know about the signals, about how dogs can help when words get stuck. Beth felt a swell of pride so intense it nearly took her breath away. 6 months ago, her daughter had been locked in a prison of silence. Now she was volunteering to share her story to help others. We'd need to discuss the details, Beth said to Rita. Set some boundaries about what Lily would be asked to do. Absolutely, Rita agreed. This would be entirely on your terms. Perhaps we could meet next week, with Judge Winters to talk more? As they exchanged contact information, Lily leaned down to whisper something in Shadow's ear. The dog looked up at her, tail thumping gently against the floor. Later that afternoon, as promised, Beth sat with Lily at the kitchen table working through fraction problems. Shadow dozed nearby, occasionally opening one eye to check on his humans. Mom? Lily said during a break. Do you think Dad will ever be okay again? Like, normal okay? Beth considered the question carefully. Richard had been following all the court's requirements. His supervised visits were going well, according to the family counselor. There had been no more angry outbursts, no more inappropriate questions. I think he's trying, Beth answered honestly. And that's important. People can change when they really want to and get the right help. Lily nodded, absently coloring in the edge of her math worksheet. I'm not scared of him anymore, not when Shadow's with me. And if Shadow couldn't be there, Lily thought about this. I think I'd still be okay. I know how to use my voice now. And Judge Winters said I could always come back to court if I needed to. Beth reached across the table and squeezed her daughter's hand. That's right. Your voice matters. It always has. That night, as Beth tucked Lily into bed, her daughter asked a question that caught her by surprise. Do you think Judge Winters knew? That first day in court when Shadow did the signal, do you think she knew right away what it meant? Beth sat on the edge of the bed, considering. I'm not sure. Why do you ask? Lily stroked Shadow's head where it rested on her blanket. I've been thinking about it. She saw something nobody else saw. She called Dr. Chen even though nobody asked her to. It's like she heard me when I wasn't talking. Some people are good listeners, Beth said softly. They hear more than words. Lily nodded, satisfied with this answer. I'm going to be a good listener too. For the other kids, the ones who still can't talk about the scary things. As Beth turned out the light, she paused in the doorway, watching her daughter and her faithful dog settling into sleep. The journey wasn't over. There would be more therapy sessions, more court appearances, more difficult conversations. Healing wasn't a straight line, but a winding path with good days and hard days. But standing there in the soft glow of the nightlight, Beth felt a certainty deep in her bones. They would be okay. All of them, even Richard in his own way. Because once a secret was spoken, whether through words or signals or the watchful eyes of a loyal dog, it lost some of its power to wound. 2 weeks later, Lily stood beside Judge Winters in a conference room at the courthouse. A small audience of legal professionals, therapists, and child advocates watched as the judge knelt to pin something special to Shadow's service vest, a custom badge that read, Courthouse Companion, Children's Communication Program. This dog, Judge Winters told the assembled group, changed how we think about testimony in this courtroom. And this brave young lady, she added, smiling at Lily, taught us that there are many ways to speak the truth. Lily stepped forward, one hand on Shadow's harness, the other holding a small microphone. Her voice wavered slightly at first, then grew stronger as she began to tell her story. My name is Lily, and this is Shadow. 6 months ago, I stopped talking. I was too scared to use my voice, but Shadow helped me find another way to be heard. As she spoke, Shadow sat perfectly at attention by her side, his dark eyes watching his girl with unmistakable pride. And in the back of the room, Beth wiped away tears as she watched her daughter's voice, once lost but now found, begin to change the world.